Kaizen philosophy, the Japanese method to rebuild discipline and self-control. Japan discovered a strange truth about human behavior. People don't fail because they are weak, but because they improve in the wrong direction. That single insight changed the way an entire nation rebuilt itself, and it can just as powerfully rebuild you. Kaizen philosophy is not a motivational spark, nor a dramatic breakthrough. It is a subtle, disciplined reorientation of your life through the smallest possible adjustments. Corrections so quiet you barely notice them, yet powerful enough to shift the entire architecture of your identity. Most people think they fall apart because they lack willpower or strength. But the deeper truth is unsettling. They became consistent in the wrong habits, disciplined in the wrong behaviors, and loyal to the very routines that weakened them. Kaizen is the correction to that drift. It teaches you to rebuild discipline through micro-improvements that demand neither intensity nor perfection, only intention, patience, and repetition. You don't need a new life. You don't need a new personality. You simply need to become 1% better each day and let that quiet consistency reshape everything you touch. And if you're ready to reconstruct your discipline, reclaim your self-control, and reshape the person you are becoming, then welcome. This journey will guide you through the Japanese method of rebuilding yourself from the inside out. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Wisdom Timeless Path, hit like, and turn on notifications so you never miss any chapter on your path toward clarity, strength, and discipline transformation. Chapter 1. The moment you realize discipline is a daily craft, not a personality trait. Alex Walker didn't expect a single morning to reveal how far he had drifted from the person he once believed himself to be. But some truths don't arrive dramatically. They arrive quietly, through small embarrassments that slip under your skin. On a gray Seattle morning, Alex rushed into the office 15 minutes late, rain still clinging to his jacket. His manager, Sarah, paused the meeting mid-sentence. The room went silent. "Good morning," she said, voice calm but edged. Alex nodded. "Sorry, traffic." Daniel, his closest friend at work, whispered from the side, "Man, that's the third time this week." Alex didn't reply. He couldn't, because he knew the truth had nothing to do with traffic. The meeting continued until Sarah reached the slide Alex was supposed to finish. It was incomplete, not even halfway done. She closed her laptop slowly. "Alex, we needed this today." Something inside him tightened. Shame, frustration, maybe resignation. It was hard to tell. "I'll finish it this afternoon." Sarah inhaled, steady but disappointed. "We needed it this morning." When the meeting ended, Daniel walked beside him. "You okay?" "I'm fine," Alex said. "You don't look fine," Daniel muttered. "You look like someone who stopped showing up for himself." The words stung because they were true. Most people believe discipline disappears suddenly, as if a single bad moment can undo years of effort. But that's rarely how it works. Discipline fades the way daylight fades, quietly, gradually, almost politely, until one day you realize darkness didn't fall. You simply stop paying attention to time. In Kaizen, we understand that erosion begins with the smallest daily choices, the things we avoid, the things we postpone, and the things we justify. And if small behaviors can weaken a person, small behaviors can also rebuild him. That evening, Alex met his sister Olivia at a small cafe downtown. She took one look at him and said, "You look exhausted." "I'm fine," Alex repeated, but his voice had no conviction. Olivia stirred her tea. "Alex, you used to be disciplined. You used to be grounded. What happened?" "I don't know," he whispered. "I just feel like I'm losing something." She softened. "You're not losing something. You're not practicing something." Alex looked up. "Practicing?" "Yes," she said. "Discipline isn't a personality trait. It's a skill. And when you stop practicing it, it fades, just like any skill." The sentence struck him harder than any criticism. A skill, not a gift, not a talent, a skill he had simply neglected. On the drive home, rain streaked across the windshield like the slow unraveling of certainty. He kept replaying Olivia's words. "You're not losing something. You're not practicing something." This is the moment most adults misunderstand. They assume their struggles are proof of personal weakness, when in reality they are symptoms of neglected repetition. Discipline isn't built from intensity, it's built from direction. A person becomes undisciplined the same way he becomes strong, through daily practice, whether intentional or accidental. If you repeat avoidance, avoidance becomes your identity. If you repeat small effort, effort becomes your identity. When Alex reached his apartment building, he saw Daniel waiting outside with 2 coffees. "You weren't answering your phone," Daniel said. "I just needed space." Daniel handed him a cup. "Then take this. And listen, you can't rebuild discipline with willpower. You rebuild it with small actions, tiny ones, but repeated." Alex stared at the steam rising from the cup. "I don't even know where to start." "Start with something you won't abandon tomorrow," Daniel said. That's how momentum begins. Inside his apartment, Alex scanned the room. Unread books, unfinished projects, a gym bag untouched for months. These weren't failures. They were footprints of a man who had stopped choosing himself daily. He sat at his desk, opened a blank notebook page, and wrote only one sentence. "Tomorrow, I practice one small thing." Not a full plan, not a giant transformation, just one small practice, something he could repeat without breaking. Great change never begins with greatness. It begins with something small enough to sustain, honest enough to repeat, and meaningful enough to shift direction by just 1 degree. Kaizen teaches that identity is not rewritten through force, but through continuity. When a person chooses one small disciplined action, he is not just changing his behavior, he is casting a vote for the kind of person he wants to become. And over time, those votes accumulate into identity. As Alex closed the notebook, he understood something he had forgotten for years. Discipline wasn't something he had lost. It was something he had stopped crafting, and tomorrow he would begin the craft again. Chapter 2, The 1% Law, How Micro Changes Rewire Your Identity. The next morning, Alex woke up before his alarm, not because of discipline, but because something unsettled him in the quiet dawn. For a brief moment, he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering whether that sentence he wrote the night before actually meant anything. "Tomorrow I practice one small thing." It sounded simple, maybe too simple, but simplicity was the only thing he hadn't tried. He got up, showered, and made his bed, a task so ordinary it almost felt pointless. And yet, when he stepped back, he noticed something. It was the first intentional action he had completed in weeks. He stood there longer than necessary, absorbing a feeling he hadn't experienced in a while: ownership, even if tiny. When he arrived at the office, Daniel spotted him immediately. "You're early?" Daniel said, raising an eyebrow. Alex shrugged. "Woke up on time." Daniel smirked. "That's new." "It felt good," Alex admitted. Sarah walked by and gave him a polite nod. Not quite approval, but not disappointment either. For the first time in a long time, Alex didn't avoid her gaze. He spent the morning working on the unfinished presentation from the day before. This time, he didn't rush. He didn't multitask. He didn't check his phone whenever boredom appeared. Instead, he made a silent agreement with himself. Do this well. Do it fully. Do it now. 2 hours later, he submitted the finished version to Sarah. No excuses. No apologies. She looked at it and said, "Thank you, Alex. This is solid work." The sentence seemed small, but it created a shift in him. A confirmation that even a 1% improvement could alter the direction of his day. Most people underestimate small progress because they are conditioned to worship dramatic change. But the human brain doesn't transform through intensity. It transforms through repetition. Micro changes gently rewrite the patterns your mind relies on. A 1% improvement seems insignificant in the moment, but compounded over weeks and months, it becomes a new identity. The question is never, can you change your life today? The question is, can you improve your direction today? At lunch, Alex sat with Daniel on the rooftop patio overlooking the city. "Do you ever feel like your life is too big to fix?" Alex asked. Daniel laughed softly. "Everyone does. That's why most people never fix anything. They think they need to rebuild the whole house, when really, they just need to replace one brick." "What if one brick isn't enough?" Alex wondered. "It's not supposed to be enough," Daniel said. "It's supposed to be the beginning." The afternoon passed smoothly. No rush, no panic. Alex wasn't perfect, but he was present. And presence, he realized, was its own form of discipline. On the way home, he stopped by a bookstore. A small Kaizen handbook caught his eye. Not a bestseller, not heavily marketed, but something quiet and honest. The first page read, "Small daily improvements are not small. They are the seeds of identity." He closed the book and exhaled. For the first time, Kaizen felt less like a concept and more like a mirror. That night, he chose one tiny practice, 10 minutes of cleaning his apartment. He set a timer, no music, no pressure, just 10 minutes. When the timer ended, the room didn't look transformed, but it felt different, lighter, more respected. His environment was reflecting the same shift happening inside him, the beginning of order. Micro improvements don't change your life instantly. They change what your life responds to. When you repeat a small disciplined action, your mind begins to trust you again. That trust becomes emotional stability. That stability becomes momentum. And momentum, even in its smallest form, becomes identity. The 1% law is not about perfection. It is about proof. Proof that you are capable of steering yourself, even gently, in a better direction. Before going to bed, Alex wrote a new line under yesterday's sentence. Tonight I improved 1%. Tomorrow I choose again. He didn't feel heroic. He didn't feel transformed. He simply felt aligned. And alignment, he realized, was easier to maintain than motivation. As he turned off the lights, he understood a truth that chapter 2 was meant to teach him. The human identity is not built in leaps. It is built in layers. And every micro layer, every 1% shift, silently shapes who you will become next. Chapter 3, Removing Friction, the Japanese strategy for making discipline effortless. Alex woke up the next morning with a strange sense of clarity. Not motivation. He didn't trust motivation anymore. But clarity. The bed was made. His desk was cleaner than usual. The presentation he finished yesterday had been well received. None of these were dramatic wins, yet together they felt like momentum, a quiet shift towards someone he wanted to become. At the office, Daniel greeted him with a grin. "You're early again. Should I call the news?" Alex smirked. "Don't make a big deal out of it." "I'm not," Daniel said. "I'm just noticing the direction." Alex liked that word, direction, because it didn't demand perfection. It only asked him to show up. They worked side by side through the morning until Alex suddenly paused. "Why do some habits feel impossible?" he asked. "Like going to the gym or reading or waking up on time. I want to do them, but something always gets in the way." Daniel leaned back in his chair. "You're not failing the habit. You're fighting the friction." Friction? Yeah, the invisible stuff that blocks you before you even start. That afternoon, Alex noticed it everywhere. He wanted to drink more water, but the bottle was buried in his bag. He wanted to read, but his books were scattered around the apartment. He wanted to exercise, but his gym shoes were shoved under his bed. Everything required effort before the effort. Maybe this was why discipline felt heavy. Most people don't quit because the habit is hard. They quit because the path to the habit is cluttered. Human behavior is sensitive to tiny obstacles. Anything that interrupts motion becomes an invitation to stop. And the mind interprets inconvenience as resistance. But remove the resistance, and action becomes natural. Discipline feels less like force and more like flow. That evening, Alex met with Olivia again. She noticed he looked different, lighter, more grounded. "What changed?" she asked. "I think I understand why I couldn't stay consistent," Alex said. "It wasn't the habit, it was everything around it." Olivia nodded. "Exactly. You don't need more discipline, you need fewer obstacles." Back home, Alex decided to test the idea. He placed his water bottle on his desk, visible, reachable. He arranged his books in one corner of the living room. He moved his gym shoes next to the door. He cleared his workspace, put his phone in another room, and prepared his clothes for the next morning. None of it took more than 10 minutes. But the apartment felt lighter, more intentional, more like a place where discipline could happen naturally. The following morning, something surprising happened. He drank water without thinking. He read a few pages without effort. He left home earlier than usual because his clothes were ready and waiting. Little actions that once felt heavy now felt strangely effortless. This is the hidden power of reducing friction. It doesn't make you stronger, it makes the behavior smoother. The mind loves what is accessible. It resists what is complicated. A person does not rise to the level of discipline they desire. They fall to the design of the environment around them. When you shape your surroundings intentionally, discipline becomes the default, not the struggle. At work, Sarah passed by his desk and said, "You seem more focused lately." Alex smiled. "I think I finally stopped relying on willpower." "And started relying on structure?" she asked. "Exactly." After work, Alex walked into his apartment and felt something he hadn't felt in months: control. Not over everything, but over the next action. And that was enough. He wrote one simple line in his notebook before bed: "Discipline grows when friction dies." And as he closed the notebook, he realized that chapter 3 wasn't just about making habits easier. It was about proving to himself that he could design a life that supported his future instead of dragging him back into his past. Chapter 4: The Power of Consistency: Why Repetition is More Important Than Intensity. A week passed, and Alex found himself surprised by how different life felt. Not dramatically different, but consistently different. The small improvements he made were starting to stack. His mornings were smoother, his work felt less chaotic, his apartment felt less like a burden and more like a space that supported him. One day at lunch, Daniel looked at him with a grin. "You're becoming predictable, man." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Predictable how?" "You keep showing up. Same time, same energy, same mindset. It's impressive." Alex chuckled. "Predictable is new for me." Later that afternoon, Sarah called Alex into her office. Her tone wasn't stern this time. It was curious. "I've been noticing something," she said. "You weren't just early this week, you were consistent. Every day. That's not easy to do." Alex shifted in his seat. "I'm trying not to rely on motivation anymore." "Good," Sarah replied. "Motivation fades. Patterns stay." Her words stayed with him the rest of the day. That evening, as the last employees filtered out of the office, Alex and Daniel stayed behind, finishing their work in comfortable silence. Eventually, Daniel broke it. "You ever notice how the world celebrates intensity? The big push, the massive effort, the dramatic turnaround?" Alex nodded. "And yet," Daniel continued, "the people who actually succeed, they're never the intense ones. They're the consistent ones." Alex looked at his computer screen and realized Daniel was right. He had tried dozens of intense bursts before: gym challenges, productivity apps, ambitious routines, but none of them lasted. What was lasting now wasn't intensity, it was repetition. Consistency is a quiet force. It doesn't demand attention, it demands commitment. Most people wait for strong emotions to drive them, not realizing that emotions are unreliable travel partners. When you remove intensity from the equation, you learn a simple truth. Momentum doesn't come from force, it comes from frequency. And every repeated action sends a message to your mind: this is who we are becoming. The next morning, Alex practiced his small habits again. Water, reading, a clean workspace, clothes prepared the night before. Each action felt lighter than the one before. He realized something important: none of these habits required motivation anymore. They had begun to edge into routine. That evening, Alex met Olivia for dinner again. She studied him with a proud, almost relieved expression. "You're steadier," she said. "Steadier?" "Yes," she smiled. "Your energy isn't bouncing all over the place. It's grounded. Consistency does that." Alex leaned back in his chair. "It's strange. I used to think I needed big changes, but the smallest repetitions are rewiring me more than anything I've ever tried." Olivia nodded. "You don't need big. You need repeatable." The human brain loves what it recognizes. It learns not through breakthroughs, but through patterns. Each repeated behavior strengthens a mental pathway. Each skipped behavior weakens it. This is why consistency outweighs intensity. The mind becomes fluent in whatever you practice most often. Over time, repetition becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. Later that night, Alex sat at his desk looking at his notebook. The page from chapter 2 still carried the words he had written. "Tonight, I improved 1%. Tomorrow, I choose again." He realized he had chosen again every day for the past week. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just consistently. He added one new line under the old ones. A small action repeated becomes a shift in identity. He closed the notebook, feeling something he hadn't felt in a long time: trust in himself. Not because he had transformed, but because he had shown up. And as he turned off the lights, Alex understood the quiet truth of chapter 4. Intensity creates excitement. Consistency creates change. Chapter 5. Self-control through environment. Design your life, don't fight it. Alex began to notice something surprising about his progress. It wasn't his mindset that was changing first. It was his surroundings. Every small adjustment he made to his environment created an invisible pull toward better choices, like gravity quietly nudging him in the right direction. One morning, as he filled his water bottle before leaving for work, Daniel called. "You heading out?" Daniel asked. "Yeah, actually on time again." "Of course you are," Daniel laughed. "The new Alex is scarily dependable." Alex smiled. "Feels strange, but good strange." At the office, Sarah stopped by his desk looking around with mild curiosity. "You reorganized your space," she said. "Yeah, clean desk, fewer distractions." She nodded. "It shows. Your focus is better." Alex didn't say it aloud, but he knew she was right. Every environmental tweak he made had become a quiet form of self-control. A cleaned workspace reduced friction. A water bottle within reach changed hydration habits. Clothes laid out the night before turned chaos into calm. After work, he met Olivia for coffee. She glanced at his neatly folded gym clothes in his bag. "Going to the gym tonight?" "Yeah," Alex replied. "It's easier when everything's ready." "That's the point," Olivia said. "People think discipline means fighting resistance, but real discipline is reducing the resistance in the first place." Her words echoed in his mind the rest of the evening. At the gym, Alex noticed something else. He wasn't using willpower to be there. He simply followed the path he had prepared earlier that day. Habit didn't feel like a battle, it felt like execution. Environment is the silent architect of behavior. Most people blame their lack of discipline on weakness when the real enemy is friction. When your surroundings are aligned with your goals, self-control becomes less about effort and more about design. You do not rise to the level of your intentions. You fall to the structure of your environment. Change the structure, and the behavior evolves naturally. Later that night, Alex cleaned his apartment a little more. He placed a book on his nightstand. He arranged healthy snacks at eye level in his kitchen cabinet. He plugged his phone in across the room instead of next to his bed. Small changes, too small to impress anyone, but powerful enough to alter the next decision he would make. The next morning, when he reached for his phone and realized he had to get out of bed to silence the alarm, he groaned, but he got up instantly. When he opened the kitchen cabinet, the healthier option greeted him first. When he walked into the living room, the clean space felt like an invitation to clarity. The environment was shaping him. At work, Daniel noticed the difference. "You've changed your whole system, haven't you?" Alex nodded. "I realized I kept relying on discipline alone. That was my mistake." "Let me guess," Daniel said with a grin. "The new rule is design first, discipline second?" Alex laughed. "Exactly. Most people try to build self-control in a chaotic environment, then wonder why they fail. But behavior is not formed in isolation. It grows inside a context. When your world is cluttered, your choices weaken. When your world is intentional, your choices strengthen. Self-control is not an internal battle. It is an external arrangement that supports who you want to become. That evening, after finishing a small set of habits with surprising ease, Alex wrote a new line in his notebook. "Make the habit easy, and the discipline becomes natural." He closed the book slowly, feeling a quiet confidence forming inside him. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. Something was changing. Not because he was forcing himself to be disciplined, but because he was building a life where discipline didn't require force. And as he turned out the lights, he understood that Chapter 5 wasn't just about environment, it was about empowerment. If he could design a world that supported his best self, then the breakthrough he once thought required willpower might simply require intention. Chapter 6, Tracking the Invisible, How Small Data Creates Big Transformation. Alex didn't fully notice how far he'd come until Daniel pointed it out over coffee one Friday morning. "You realize you're different now, right?" Daniel asked, stirring his drink. "In what way?" Alex replied. "In the way Kaizen talks about," Daniel said. "You're not chasing big resets anymore. You're just quietly better every week." Alex smiled, but something about that comment stayed with him. Quietly better. That was exactly how it felt. No grand transformation, no cinematic turning point, just a slow but undeniable shift. On the walk back to the office, he wondered, if I'm changing, how do I really know how much? He could feel it, sure, but feeling was vague, and the old version of him had relied too much on vague feelings. That's how he drifted before. He never measured anything, so he never really saw where he was going. That afternoon during a break, he stumbled across an article about how Japanese factories use Kaizen charts and visual boards to track every small improvement on the production line. Nothing was too small to measure. One tiny adjustment in a process, one minor reduction in waste, 1 second saved on emotion, it all went on the board. He leaned back in his chair thinking, if they track tiny changes in machines, why don't I track tiny changes in myself? That evening at home, he pulled out his notebook and drew a simple grid. No fancy app, no complicated system, just a list of behaviors he cared about now. Wake up on time, drink water, read, exercise, clean for 10 minutes, prepare clothes, limit late night screen time. Next to each, he left small boxes for each day of the week. For a moment, he felt foolish. This looks like a child's chart, he muttered to himself. Then he remembered the Kaizen principle he had read. The Japanese didn't care if a method looked simple, as long as it worked repeatedly. Sophistication was secondary. Consistency was everything. He decided he would do one thing: track, not judge. Just mark what he did, nothing more. The first week was messy. Some days were full of check marks, others were almost empty. But for the first time, he didn't have to guess whether he was living with discipline. The data was right in front of him. Small, honest, undeniable. Small data is powerful because it removes the story and reveals the truth. Your mind can justify almost anything. I'm trying, I'm doing okay, I've been better lately. But numbers don't negotiate. A single check mark is proof. A blank space is also proof. Kaizen discipline, the Japanese method of rebuilding self-control, is not built on how you feel about your efforts, but on what you can see you repeatedly do. When you begin to track the invisible, you turn vague progress into clear reality. One night, Olivia dropped by his apartment and noticed the chart on his table. "What's this?" she asked, picking it up. "My Kaizen tracker," Alex said, half joking, half proud. She scanned the marks. "Looks like you had a rough Wednesday." "Yeah," he admitted, "but Thursday was better," she smiled. "That's the point. You're not aiming for perfect weeks. You're aiming for honest ones." He exhaled in relief. "I guess before this, everything in my head was blurry. I thought I was doing more than I was, or less than I was, depending on my mood." "Exactly," Olivia replied. "This is how the Japanese rebuilt entire systems, by tracking tiny variables until they understood what was really happening. You're doing the same, just on the level of your life." Over the next 2 weeks, Alex noticed a pattern. The days when he checked off just one habit were usually the days that prevented him from spiraling completely. The days with 3 or 4 check marks felt solid, grounded. The days with none, he could now see them clearly instead of pretending they didn't exist. He wasn't just living anymore, he was observing himself in motion. Tracking is not about control, it is about awareness. And awareness is the foundation of all self-control. When you see your behaviors mapped out, you stop telling yourself stories and start facing patterns. Kaizen discipline uses this principle deliberately. Small numbers, collected consistently, slowly change the way you view yourself. You no longer say, "I'm trying to be disciplined." You either see the marks or the empty spaces. Both are lessons, not verdicts. One evening, after a long day at work, Alex came home exhausted. The old version of him would have collapsed straight into distraction. This time, he glanced at his chart. The entire row for that day was still empty. He could have told himself, "It's been a hard day. I deserve to rest." Instead, he asked a different question. What is one box I can still honestly earn before this day ends? 10 minutes later, he had a small workout done. A few minutes after that, he spent 5 minutes cleaning. 2 boxes filled, nothing extraordinary, but it turned a lost day into a salvageable one. He sat down, pen in hand, and realized something important. The chart wasn't pressuring him. It was inviting him to end each day just 1% better than it began. He wrote at the bottom of the page, "What I track, I respect. What I respect, I improve." And as he closed the notebook, he understood the deeper meaning of this chapter. The Japanese didn't transform industries through slogans. They did it through measuring tiny changes relentlessly. In the same way, his Kaizen discipline wasn't going to be built by motivation or identity affirmations, but by humble, honest rows of small data. He didn't just want to feel like a disciplined person. He wanted the numbers to quietly prove it. Chapter 7, Correcting Gently, the Art of Self-Reflection Without Shame. By the middle of the month, Alex had enough data in his Kaizen tracker to see the truth he once avoided. Progress wasn't linear. Some days were clean and steady, others were chaotic and empty. What surprised him wasn't the good days, it was the bad ones. They weren't disasters, they weren't proof of failure. They were simply information. One Friday afternoon, Daniel approached him at work. "You look stressed," Daniel said. "I messed up yesterday," Alex admitted. "Did barely anything on my tracker." "So?" Daniel shrugged. "That's part of it. It still feels like slipping. It feels like slipping because you think discipline means perfection," Daniel said. "But Kaizen, especially the Japanese approach, is about gentle correction, not punishment." That night, Alex sat at his kitchen table staring at yesterday's empty boxes. The old version of him would have spiraled, criticizing himself, making declarations, planning extreme resets. Now, he simply breathed. He remembered something Olivia once told him. Progress collapses when shame replaces reflection. The words resurfaced exactly when he needed them. As he looked at the blank squares, he didn't feel broken. He felt curious. What happened yesterday? Why did he fall off? What small adjustment could he make to reduce the chance of repeating it? Self-reflection becomes powerful when it stops sounding like judgment and starts sounding like investigation. Shame freezes a person in place. Curiosity moves them forward. The Japanese practice of Kaizen is rooted in this idea: correct gently, correct daily. When you reflect without attacking yourself, you create a mind that is safe enough to grow and honest enough to improve. Growth doesn't require punishment. It requires clarity. The next morning, Alex met Olivia for brunch. "I had a bad day yesterday," he told her. "Did you quit?" Olivia asked. "No." "Then it wasn't a bad day. It was a data point. What did you learn?" Alex thought for a moment. "I didn't sleep enough. When I'm exhausted, everything collapses." "Good. Now you know the trigger," she said. Kaizen is not about never breaking the chain. It's about repairing the chain fast. He felt something inside him loosen, like permission to be human without losing momentum. Later that week, at work, Sarah called Alex into her office. "I've been watching your progress," she said. "You're steadier, more reliable, and even when you have an off day, you recover quickly." Alex nodded. "I'm learning not to treat mistakes like identity." Sarah smiled. "That's emotional maturity. Fixed mindset people collapse when they slip. Kaizen-minded people correct quietly and continue." When he returned to his desk, Daniel rolled over in his chair. "Let me guess," Daniel said. "Positive meeting?" "She said I recover fast," Alex replied. Daniel tapped his table. "Exactly what Kaizen discipline is meant to do. The Japanese call it hansei, reflection without self-destruction." That night, Alex returned home feeling grounded. He wrote in his notebook, "Mistakes are not failures, they are feedback." He paused, then added another line. "If I correct gently, I continue. If I correct harshly, I quit." Gentle correction is a skill, not an instinct. Most people react to mistakes with self-attack, believing that harshness creates discipline, when in reality, it destroys resilience. Kaizen teaches that improvement must feel safe to sustain. A person who can look at their worst day with calm awareness, not shame, becomes unstoppable over time. Because nothing derails him, everything teaches him. Alex closed the notebook, feeling a quiet steadiness settle in his chest. He didn't dread mistakes anymore. He didn't fear slipping. He knew the path wasn't meant to be spotless. It was meant to be continuous. And in learning to correct gently, he discovered something far more valuable than perfection: the ability to rebuild himself every day without breaking himself in the process. Chapter 8: Momentum over Motivation: How Kaizen Eliminates Emotional Dependency. Alex used to believe he needed motivation to move. Good days, inspired days, energized days, those were the days he expected discipline to show up. But as the weeks passed, he realized a quiet truth. The days he made the most progress were never the days he felt the most ready. They were simply the days he maintained momentum. One Monday morning, he walked into the office tired, unexcited, and not in the mood to accomplish much of anything. Daniel glanced at him with a smirk. "Long weekend?" "Too long," Alex muttered. "I'm running on empty." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You still doing your habits today?" Alex hesitated. "Honestly, I don't feel like it." Daniel leaned back. "Good, that's exactly when they matter." The comment annoyed him at first, but it followed him throughout the morning. He didn't feel motivated, he didn't feel focused, yet he still drank his water. Still read a few pages, still cleaned his workspace, still added check marks on his Kaizen tracker, and strangely by noon, the heaviness he felt earlier had faded. Later that afternoon, Alex sat with Olivia at a quiet cafe. "You look drained," she said. "I am," Alex answered. "But I still did everything on my list today." Olivia smiled. "Then today matters more than any motivated day ever could." Alex frowned slightly. "Why's that?" "Because you moved without emotional permission," she said. "That's the difference between motivation and momentum. Motivation is a spark. It burns bright, but it burns out quickly. Momentum is a wheel. It turns slowly at first, then carries you forward even when you feel nothing." The Japanese built the Kaizen discipline on this principle. Emotional states cannot be trusted to determine behavior. Instead, behavior must be small, repeatable, and independent of mood. When you act without waiting to feel ready, you train your identity to move consistently, not conditionally. That night, Alex thought back to all the times in his life he had started something with intensity, only to quit as soon as the excitement faded. He remembered gym memberships used for 2 weeks, passion projects abandoned within months, routines that felt powerful at first but collapsed under emotional fatigue. Now things felt different. He wasn't relying on desire. He wasn't chasing a feeling. He was simply honoring a rhythm. The next morning he woke up groggy again, but the habits were so frictionless he completed them almost automatically. Drink water, make the bed, 10 minutes of cleaning, 5 pages of reading. Check, 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 check. He didn't feel proud. He didn't feel inspired. He just felt steady. At work, Sarah called him into her office once more. "You seem incredibly consistent," she said. "I'm trying," Alex replied. "No," Sarah corrected, "you're practicing." And it shows. When he stepped back out into the hallway, Daniel bumped his shoulder. "See?" Daniel said. "Momentum. You're not running on motivation anymore." Alex nodded slowly. "I think I'm finally learning the difference." Progress doesn't require passion. It requires continuity. People overestimate the importance of emotional highs and underestimate the quiet power of accumulated action. Kaizen discipline thrives because it removes the need for inspiration. Instead, it creates a lifestyle where every small movement feeds the next and the next and the next, until momentum becomes a psychological engine. Once momentum takes over, you no longer push yourself forward. Your habits pull you forward. That night, Alex filled in his tracker again, every box marked. No perfect days, but no 0 days either. He realized something important. Motivation used to dictate his behavior. Now, his behavior dictated his momentum. And that shift was transforming him more deeply than he ever expected. He flipped to a new page in his notebook and wrote, "Consistency doesn't need feelings, only action." Then he paused, added one more line, "If I honor the motion, the emotion will follow." He closed the notebook with a sense of grounded confidence, not excitement, not intensity, just the assurance of someone who has finally stepped off the emotional roller coaster and found something far more reliable: momentum. Chapter 9. Becoming the 1% Better Self, Your New Identity Through Kaizen Discipline. By the time a full month had passed, Alex no longer needed reminders to practice his habits. They had woven themselves into the rhythm of his days, almost like a quiet heartbeat guiding him forward. His life wasn't perfect, but it was undeniably different. Simpler, cleaner, steadier, and most importantly, it felt like it belonged to him again. One crisp Saturday morning, Alex met Daniel at a small neighborhood diner. The sunlight streamed through the windows, and the smell of fresh coffee filled the air. Daniel looked at him for a long moment before saying, "You know, if someone hadn't seen you for a month, they'd think you're a different guy." Alex laughed. "Am I?" "Yeah," Daniel said, "but not because you became someone else. You became yourself, the version you kept avoiding." The words hit deeper than Alex expected. For the first time in years, he wasn't pretending to be okay. He genuinely was. Later that afternoon, he met Olivia at Green Lake. They walked along the water in comfortable silence until she finally spoke. "You look grounded," she said. "I feel grounded," Alex replied. "And proud?" Alex paused, then nodded. "Yeah, for the first time in a long time, I'm proud of myself." Olivia smiled. "That's identity talking, not motivation. Identity shifts rarely happen in big moments. They happen quietly beneath the surface, each time you choose the smallest disciplined action. Kaizen discipline doesn't transform you through intensity, but through accumulation. The repeated proof that you are capable, reliable, and aligned. Over time, the mind updates its self-image. "This is who I am now." The Japanese understood that identity is not declared, it is demonstrated through daily practice. As the sun began to set, they sat on a bench overlooking the lake. "So what's next?" Olivia asked. "I don't know," Alex admitted, "but I'm not worried about the future anymore. I know how to build it now, 1% at a time." When Monday arrived, Alex stepped into the office with a presence that Sarah noticed immediately. "You seem more intentional these days," she said. "I'm just practicing," he replied. Sarah smiled. "Keep practicing. It's clearly working." During lunch, Daniel leaned across the table. "You ever think about how far you've come?" "I do," Alex said softly. "But what surprises me most isn't the progress. It's the fact that I trust myself again." Trust. That was the real transformation. Not the habits, not the check marks, not even the consistency. It was the quiet restoration of self-belief, earned slowly, honestly, repeatedly. When you show up for yourself in tiny ways, your mind takes note. It begins to see you as someone who acts, not someone who hopes, someone who builds, not someone who waits. Kaizen Discipline rewires your identity by teaching you one truth. You do not need to feel ready, strong, or inspired. You only need to honor the smallest possible improvement and allow that improvement to reshape you from the inside out. That evening, Alex sat in his apartment looking around. It wasn't a luxury home. It wasn't perfectly organized, but it was a reflection of who he had become. Intentional, consistent, quietly improving. He opened his notebook to the first page where he had written, "Tomorrow, I practice one small thing." Below it, he added the final line of his journey, "I am built daily." He closed the notebook and felt a sense of calm pride spread through him. Not the pride that shouts, but the kind that settles deeply, earned through countless small decisions no one else saw, but all of which mattered. Alex Walker had not reinvented himself. He had returned to himself, 1% at a time. And as he turned off the light, he understood the final truth of Kaizen discipline. It is not about becoming extraordinary. It is about becoming consistent, and consistency, practiced daily, quietly turns ordinary people into unstoppable ones. Thank you for listening, and if this journey resonated with you, make sure to follow Wisdom Timeless Path for more guided transformations and timeless lessons.